really matters? That might be the most important question you can ask. So let's talk about it. Welcome to What Really Matters podcast, Everyday Spirituality. This is Karen Wyatt, and together we're sharing episode number 13. Today I'm talking about how do I actually love myself, which is, I think, one of the greatest questions of our lifetimes. We all know, at least we're all hearing from modern psychology, that it's important to love ourselves. And yet when you really get down to it, how do you actually do that? So I'm going to share with you a story, some poems, and some insights that I have gathered about self-love as I've been working on this practice in my own journey. So the idea for this podcast came to me just a couple of days ago when I was watching a video. It was an interview actually with Anita Moorjani. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Anita Moorjani. She's a woman. She's the author of the book Dying to Be Me, which tells her story. But she was actually actively dying from stage 4 cancer, was in a coma. Her family was gathered around her. She traveled to the other side and had an experience there where she met her father and was told that her work wasn't finished, and she made the choice to come back. She woke up from that coma and her cancer healed very rapidly over the next several months, and now here it's, I don't know how many, 10 or 12 years later, she's still alive and healthy and teaching. But in this interview, she said that what she learned through her near-death experience is that the most important thing for us to focus on is love. And I've heard that many times from other near-death experiencers. And again, it's one of the lessons that I emphasize in the 7 lessons that I talk about, and that as really the most important thing, that we're here to learn how to love. But what Anita said was that love begins with self-love, and we can't really bring love for other people to the planet or love for anything else if we have not mastered self-love. And she said, if we are not loving ourselves, and she said she means by that loving our own souls, our souls will actually withdraw from us and not be as active or engaged in our lives if we treat our souls badly, in a sense. If we don't love ourselves, we don't love our own souls, if we criticize and judge and reject and deny our own souls. This made a really big impact on me when I heard it, and partly because you might remember a few episodes ago when I was sharing the lesson of love in an earlier podcast, I mentioned that it only just now occurred to me that in the writing that I've done about love, I actually left self-love out. I actually didn't even include it. And that was very startling to me in a way, to think, how did I not recognize that? How did I not see the importance of self-love and not talk about it and not bring it into my books and even into my podcast before? So that got me started on a journey of really thinking about self-love and trying to figure out, how do I actually do a better job of loving myself? So as we dive into this topic of self-love, I'll tell you a little story that a number of years ago, my daughter Gia and I decided that we wanted to team up for a workshop. Gia at that time was a yoga and meditation teacher, also a singer-songwriter. And we thought the two of us could do a really powerful workshop together by combining yoga and meditation and writing. And so she was in charge of creating the yoga and meditation portion of our workshop. And I came up with some writing exercises that we would do. And the two of us decided we wanted to focus our workshop on self-love for women in particular. And as we looked back at our own journeys, we thought, yes, that's one of the most important things. How do we love ourselves, and how might we use tools like yoga and meditation and journaling to help us love ourselves? We spent several months planning this workshop together. We really put our heart and souls into this. And Gia found a location for us where we could hold the workshop. We sent out lots of invitations. We made flyers. We did marketing for it online. Gia actually handed flyers out to people, to women, to invite them to come to our workshop, where she actually met some pushback from people who said, I already love myself. I don't need this. And in fact, I was finding the same thing through the marketing and promotion that I was doing online, of people saying, not interested, I don't need this. It was a little bit surprising to us, because we felt at that time like everyone would be aware of needing to love themselves. Now, I will say, we had identified that not being able to love themselves is a problem that other people had. We were looking at others and thinking we should help them love themselves more. That's the frame of mind we were coming from in offering this workshop, that we were going to teach other people how to love themselves more. And what happened, for all of our hard work, the day of the workshop, when we arrived at the place it was located, I showed up with my notebook where all my notes and all my plans were, and the outline of everything we were doing for the day. However, I had grabbed the wrong notebook when I left that morning. I didn't bring the notebook with me that had all of the information for my portion of the workshop in it, or the outline and how things were going to go. I brought a different notebook. I grabbed the wrong thing. I had none of my notes, none of my information. And it threw me into quite a tizzy for a while, because I had to try to recreate really quickly, what was it? How are we going to do this? What was I going to have people journal during the workshop? So I was in quite a difficult state as we got started, and we'd already spent the morning shopping for snacks and beverages for everyone to have during the workshop, setting up chairs, setting up yoga mats, so we were all ready for everything. And here I was, completely discombobulated because I didn't bring my notes, but I managed to recover and put enough down on paper and reorganize my thoughts so I knew what I would do. But we waited and we waited, and no one came. Eventually, within 10 or 15 minutes, finally 2 women arrived for the workshop. By the time they got there, Gia and I were already feeling pretty demoralized, but we went ahead and did our workshop. But the fact is, we had been expecting 20, 25 people to show up, and only 2 people actually came that day. So we did our teaching, we held it together, we did the very best we could. The 2 women who came were grateful to us, and we tried really hard to rise above the situation and to say, it was great, maybe it was perfect for those 2 women that they got to be there alone without a lot of other people. They got all this specialized attention from us and got to do a lot of talking during the workshop. But the fact is, both of us were devastated that this workshop we'd planned for months and months and months, in our eyes, had been a complete failure. We didn't say that to one another at first, but each of us was deeply wounded and hurting very badly over this workshop. A few months later, and over probably several months, we began to talk about it and discovered that each one of us was blaming ourselves totally for why the workshop didn't turn out, what went wrong, why did it fail. But each one of us was also looking at ourselves as failures. And in my mind, I thought, if Gia had done the workshop by herself, it would have been a success. It's my fault that it failed. I brought some negative energy to it, and here I didn't remember I brought the wrong notebook. I wasn't prepared. It was my fault. Gia had some of the same thoughts about herself. Both of us were just filled with self-blame and self-loathing and could only view the workshop as a failure. That's all either one of us could see about it. We were unable to take anything positive from it. It was still, again, a few months after that one day, probably simultaneously, we each had a realization that, you know who the self-love workshop was actually for? You know who it was meant for? The two of us. The self-love workshop was so the two of us could get a look at our own inability to be loving and gentle and kind and compassionate toward ourselves, so that we could see right before our eyes how judgmental and negative we were toward ourselves when something didn't work out the way we had hoped. It was a profound learning experience, and both of us actually laughed when we realized it. And from then on, we began to talk about the self-love workshop instead of our greatest failure as, hey, what a success that workshop was, because we both figured out that we need to do some work on loving ourselves. And that was really actually such a profound revelation. Now, I have to be honest, it still stings a little bit when I think about all of our hopes and expectations for that workshop that didn't work out. But I'm so very grateful that it didn't turn out the way we thought, because going through that challenge together was so important in terms of bringing up from the mud of our own unconscious thoughts and feelings just how much we expected ourselves to be perfect and how much we actually had no mercy for ourselves. When it came down to it, we didn't have very much self-love, not enough self-love to get us through a disappointment and to do it gracefully without feeling negative and down on ourselves and full of blame and shame for what had happened. So that event pointed out to me this very deep need for some healing within me, and made me start wondering and questioning, why is it so hard for me to love myself? And I looked back at that time on a lot of the socialization I had received as a child and religious training, which taught me that to think about yourself is selfish and it's wrong. It's putting yourself ahead of other people, and that's not the right way to live your life, especially if you want to be a good person. So I definitely had a lot of negative thoughts in my head about self-love or self-care or self-compassion, anything that involved the self, that it was better to deprive yourself and to be hard on yourself than it was to actually love yourself. So I knew I had a lot of conditioning and training that had to be undone. And I've spent a lot of years working on that, and also just trying to bring to the surface any other beliefs like that I might be carrying and holding within me. I don't think I've gotten to the bottom of it yet. I think I need more work at it. But I understand it's not just me who has had this experience throughout childhood and just throughout life as a member of our society. And when I think back to all the people who told Gia and me that they didn't need a self-love workshop, they already loved themselves, I realized they might have been people in the same place I was who thought that's for someone else. Someone else might need to learn how to love themselves. I'm fine in that area. They might have been as oblivious to their own self-loathing and self-judgment as I was at that time. So I do wonder sometimes if perhaps our workshop was a little ahead of its time, or maybe we didn't offer it in the right way, or to be honest, that workshop was to teach the two of us how to do a better job loving ourselves. And we weren't ready to actually be teachers of self-love. We were the students learning about self-love. And who knows, maybe there will be a day in the future when we've learned enough that we ourselves might be able to serve as teachers. But I wanted to share a sweet little short poem by Alex Elle as we look at this idea of how have we been conditioned to not love ourselves. And Alex writes, "Who taught you to unlove yourself so sweetly that you actually thought it tasted good?" Wow, that little verse sums up for me exactly why I clung to those beliefs that I should deny myself, I should dislike myself, I should be harsh with myself and judge myself, because it seemed like that was the right thing to do. It seemed like that was sweet. That was the best way to be a good person. And so to now unravel all of that and look more deeply at how do I actually hold myself accountable, take a look at my flaws, at my weaknesses, be totally honest with myself. I'm nowhere close to perfect. I've made lots of mistakes. There are lots of things I need to forgive myself for. But how do I take all of that into account and nonetheless still love myself? How can I love myself and love all of me, including the darkness, as we've talked about in the last few episodes, including the flaws, the mistakes, sometimes very hurtful, negative things that I've done in my life? Can I take all of it in? Can I look at the whole of me and love all of me and welcome all of the parts of me to be together in this life, woven together, nothing hidden, nothing rejected, nothing shamed, nothing cut off or separated, but all of me. And I believe that's the best way to do what Anita Moorjani was describing as loving our soul, loving the totality of who we are, so that we can show up in the world with everything we've got, with every part of us that makes us who we are. And I wanted to share another poem, this by Rupi Kaur. "The universe took its time on you, crafted you to offer the world something different from everyone else. When you doubt how you were created, you doubt an energy greater than us both." And again, that's by Rupi Kaur. And that's a phenomenal verse in itself, reminding us that we should not doubt the perfection of who we are. Perfect in the sense of the universe, not in the sense of our human ideas of what perfection is, but that all of the parts of us have been crafted perfectly to make us unique beings in this world with unique gifts and talents that we have to offer the world. And we do a disservice to the universe in a way by doubting that, by not believing that what life has brought me and what my DNA has given me, what my soul brings to me, all of it comes together. My ancestry, my legacy, heritage, history, it all comes together. It all makes me who I am. And it's all part of the gift that I came here to bring to the world. And one more poem that I love by Nikita Gill along the same lines. "You are not small. You are not unworthy. You are not insignificant. The universe wove you from a constellation just so Adam, Every fiber in you comes from a different star. Together, you are bound by stardust, altogether spectacularly created by the energy of the universe itself. And that, my darling, is the poetry of physics, the poetry of you. So, another beautiful poem reminding us to cherish everything that we are, because we have been created so uniquely with so many different facets of ourselves, made of the stars, of stardust, just to come here to be stars on our own planet and to bring whatever it is that we have, whatever love we have to share. So putting these poems together and these thoughts together, it inspires me totally to know I definitely need to love myself more. And I definitely need to make a practice of working on it intentionally every single day. These poems inspire me in my mind and my heart to say, this is what I want to do. I want to believe these words. I want to embody these words and to know that I'm a unique being here with special talents the world needs. And I want to never again punish myself emotionally or doubt myself or reject myself for not being perfect. I want to see how me, with my faults and mistakes and flaws and so-called failures, how I'm perfect for the world, how the world needs exactly what it is I have to offer. So for the rest of this little talk, I want to really look at how do we practice greater self-love. And one of the places that I've turned for some answers is the book Buddha's Brain by Rick Hanson, which has been really instructive to me in learning about the structure of the brain, how the brain functions physiologically, and the role the brain plays in how we feel emotionally and how we feel about ourselves. So here are some things that I picked up from reading Buddha's Brain, which I highly recommend if you haven't read the book yet. And this is kind of my own game plan for how I am working on my own self-love. And so the first step is recognizing my own pain and shame whenever they arise. Whenever I have a thought or an emotion that is negative about myself, that brings up maybe a memory I'm embarrassed about or feel badly about, something that makes me think negatively about myself, I recognize it. I stop for a moment and look at that. I try to think, where does this come from? Is this something old from the past that I need to work through and forgive myself for right now? Is this something new? Usually not. It usually does come from the past, but I need to recognize that feeling of internal shame and negativity every time it arises so that I can pay attention to it. And I can link it to, oh, what happened just now in my day-to-day life that made me feel this way? Did I make a mistake? Did I break something? Did I forget to do something I said I would do? What was it that brought up the shame, and how was the episode that occurred today related to something from the past, a wound from the past, or something that I simply have not wanted to look at very closely, so I've repressed it. I've shoved it aside and tried to keep it from being part of me. And so the next step that I got from reading Buddha's Brain is the idea of cooling down the judgmental thoughts that are present and soothing the pain of the wounds that are inside of me. Because if you think about, imagine if you were caring for someone who'd been hurt or someone who was ill. Someone who had a fever, you would put a cool cloth on their head. You might sponge them down with cool water. You might hold them or cuddle up next to them, or at least hold their hand or touch their face or their head as a way of comforting and soothing them in that moment. And this is a way of saying to myself, it's okay, I'm okay. I'm here with myself. I'm here with those hurt feelings. I'm here with the woundedness. I'm here with the shame. And it's all going to be okay. We're going to work through this. So it's a way of accepting the part of you that's hurting instead of pushing it away and saying, oh, I don't want this to be true. I'm not going to look at it, but actually embracing it. And Rick Hanson talks about this idea of bringing in the good whenever we expose painful memories or wounds or negativity within ourselves. We need to counterbalance it by bringing in something positive, bringing in the good to surround it with the good. So Rick says that first of all, notice the goodness around you. So you actually look for something that you can verify in your space, like, oh, look, the sun is shining and it's beautiful, or look at that tree outside my window, or taste this delicious coffee I just poured for myself. Anything that's positive. And you turn what you've recognized as positive into an experience by actually sensing it. So you spend time actually looking at the tree, if that's the beauty that you've noticed, actually taking it in with your senses, fully tasting the coffee, feeling the breeze on your skin, whatever it is, you spend a moment experiencing it with your senses. That makes it come alive for you and be real, be an actual real experience that the brain is recording. And then the next thing you do is to let that positive experience sink in. So you even envision that, oh, that beautiful tree, that is like love in this world. And you experience it, you take it in, and then you picture it sinking in and going all the way down, penetrating all of the painful memories, all of the woundedness, and just surrounding those wounded places like a soft gauze that's wrapping up the wounds and allowing them to heal. So you do this little exercise. You can do it quickly in just a few moments when some painful memory arises in you, or a feeling of shame or some other type of negativity, surrounding it with the beauty that you have just taken in from the world around you. The more you practice that, the more easily you will do it. Almost automatically, you'll begin to take in. Your brain will actually be seeking beauty to help counterbalance and help soothe and surround the pain and the woundedness that you feel. And one thing that Rick Hanson emphasizes is that every little moment that you take in the good, that you bring in positivity into yourself, every little moment adds up. And there's nothing too small to contribute to the positivity within you, the light and the love that you feel. So take advantage of every single opportunity that you have. And in a way, no moment of pain or woundedness or negativity is too small to be ignored. Use all of it. Use it as fuel and a catalyst for helping you heal and bring in more light and more love within yourself. And he also reminds us to just pause to notice the good, even in other times when there isn't something negative or we don't have a negative feeling within. But if you're driving by and you see an incredible view, if you're able to pause for just a moment and notice it, maybe even you're scrolling through your phone and you see an incredible photograph somewhere on social media and it's inspiring, stop for a moment, just pause and take it in. He talks about savoring the positive feelings because that's how we make them more real to ourselves, and we help our brain store that feeling of positivity and beauty and love and light within ourselves. So remember these things, recognize the pain and shame, cool down the judgments and soothe the pain by bringing in what is good around you. Notice the positive, experience the positive, and then let it sink into the wounded places. Also, all the little moments add up, so there's no moment too small to pay attention to. And remember to pause and notice what is good around you all the time. Make it a little practice to pause for a second or two every time something beautiful is happening, so that your brain gets excited about looking for goodness in the world instead of over-focusing on what's negative or frightening or worrisome. So train your brain to notice the good, notice the beauty, notice the positive, and savor it every opportunity that you have. I think these are some really beautiful ways to approach this idea of self-love. The more we're bringing in this good and love and light, the more we can heal those old wounds that are still there, serving as obstacles to our ability to deeply and fully love ourselves. So this is what I'm working on and how I'm working on it. I'm sharing it with you here in this podcast in hopes that it might be helpful for you too. You are welcome to leave a voice message if you would like. If you go to wherever you're listening to this post, there should be a little message, that's a little sign that says message, where you can click on it and then record a voice message if you have a comment, or if you have something you'd like to share. I'd love to hear your ideas. How are you doing a better job of loving yourself? How are you creating your own self-love workshop? That's what this is. This is my self-love workshop right here. I'm working on it every single day. So thank you for joining me and listening in today. And yes, we are here for love, and it starts with self-love. That's where we have to begin. So let's remember together to face our fear, be ready for whatever life shows us next, because we have no idea what might be coming down the road, and just love each and every moment of being here on planet Earth. Bye-bye.